They were accidentally contributing to these gnarly problems that they were working to solve on these multi-million and multi-billion-dollar projects.
Welcome to Leading Without the BS. Unfiltered, unapologetic, unstoppable performance.
Hey, I'm Ivan. I'm the Vice President of Wingspan Performance.
I'm Kathy, founder and president of Wingspan Performance and one of your leadership performance advisors.
Yeah. So we're glad to have you here on the Leading Without the BS podcast. So we're going to jump in today with playing to this. A lot with the last few conversations have gone with some interviews and how did people get involved with Wingspan. We're going to start with what is behavioral performance and how did Wingspan become a thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. I'm excited to talk about that today.
Good. So let's start with this. What kinds of problems were you working to solve when you got started?
Good question. There were two main problems I was aiming to solve. A gabillion years ago in my previous life, I worked in technology. And so systems administration, systems implementation, system security. And what was happening in working on lots of projects and initiatives, I'll give an example. I got to spend a lot of time on a trading desk. So working with traders, portfolio managers. When I was
stuff.
Yes. When I was actually still in university. It was my senior year, and I was already working like a full-time, a real job with this mutual fund company. And so it was coming out of several different roles, working at the university, working with a lot of the students, a lot of the faculty. I was able to see firsthand how people were interacting with each other, a lot of times around technology, and where they were creating conflict, counterproductive conflict, or where they were just missing each other like ships in the night. They're just completely missing what one another was saying. And so coming into this role at the mutual fund company and working, as you can imagine, at a trading desk, working under high pressure, and seeing how these leaders were interacting, what was happening is there's this over-reliance and almost like a fixation on the technical side of the work they were doing, when really where they were falling down, where they were creating disconnects, and it was costing a lot of money, was on what I coined as behavioral performance. It was how they were communicating with each other, how they were not communicating with each other, how they were interacting. And then, of course, at the heart of that for every single one of us is our mindset during that. That was one of the primary problems. Right after that role, I started to work for KPMG, and so I had the opportunity to work in lots of different kinds of companies, and my peers were all just absolutely brilliant. They were my mentors. They took me under their wing because we were working in the information systems security function, and so I was adequate on the technical side of what we did. And then thanks to them, I got better. And what was happening over a couple of years' time is I was getting opportunities that they wanted, that they deserved, and they were getting passed over. And I finally asked one of the partners at the time, I said there was a project coming up, and a couple of the guys really wanted to be on that project, and I was chosen for it. And I said, Scott's like the dude for this. Why are you?
You said that to the manager.
I did.
Yeah, good for you.
I said, Scott's the dude. Why are you asking me to be on this project? And he looked at me like I was absolutely ridiculous. And he said, because you can talk to people.
Yeah.
And that was a definite aha moment. It was a turning point because I then started to hear and see business leaders were passing over some of these colleagues of mine who were just absolutely fantastic, except they were not getting the promotions they wanted. They were not getting the opportunities that they wanted. And the decision makers were saying, oh, well, that's because they're not, they're just technical.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. It reminds me when I was at a software company myself. We we focused exclusively on mapping software, and there were folks who were really brilliant. I remember sometimes people would say, "Well, they're not really customer facing," and I remember at the time it striking me as a little odd. I'm like, "Well, what the hell does that even mean? They're not customer facing." What I realized was, like you're describing, they had a hard time talking to quote unquote normal people. So it was very easy for them to fall into what we would call autopilot and talk to folks who understood things already at this pretty darn high level. For them to shift out of that and to think more fully and completely about the conversation where they weren't talking to somebody who was an expert was just such a big lift that they were like, screw it, not going to do it. Just if you're not already running at this speed, don't even talk to me about this stuff because I'm just going to leave you in the dust.
Sure. Yeah. So the two main problems were there were business problems and relationship problems because people were only focused on the technical side of what they were doing. And then there were also problems with these colleagues that I just really loved and respected, and they were not getting, again, that advancement or the opportunities that they really wanted for themselves. Yeah. And so I was so determined to create a system where leaders who are more technical and they want to expand their scope of leadership impact or their scope of influence without thinking or feeling like they had to become someone else.
Interesting. So you're describing where you started off with this in the technical space. Obviously now we work with businesses all over the world, and that's because this transfers, because this is really a focus on how people work with people.
Definitely. So even in the very first few years of Wingspan, that's when I really started to see it as a system. And so it was a way that I was working with people and I was helping other people work this way with people. And I really started to see it as a system. And so I spent a lot of time working on power plant construction sites where there was the leader teams were a combination of the more academically educated engineers and then also the industrially educated tradesmen and craftsmen. And so working in that intersection was really, really fantastic. It got a little challenging at times, the way that they would express some of their frustration and anger out on a construction site. Though when I started to help them to see how they were accidentally creating these disconnects with each other and this unproductive or counterproductive conflict with each other, and also how they were accidentally contributing to these gnarly problems that they were working to solve on these multi-million and multi-billion-dollar projects. Wow.
So as you started to see these communication gaps and these issues, and you said, I want to step in and start to help folks, like, what were you basing this on? Like, what did you come up with as a starting point? How did you choose that?
Yeah, it's really, I'm glad that you're asking because people will ask, are you a psychologist? are you they'll ask questions like that. And
the answer is no, you're the worst psychologist ever.
And the answer is no, absolutely not. Because they also ask, like, are you a therapist? Even though lots of leaders will, and you know this, they'll joke about it feeling like therapy sometimes because they're focused on their most important things when they meet with us. Though, what I based it on was my everyday interactions with teams. Even before that, again, even back when I was working full-time with college full-time, I had 3 jobs on campus for a couple of years. I worked in the computer lab with all the students. I was a programmer. And then back then it was called a PC technician. So I supported all the staff and faculty on their desktops. And also, just to age myself, we were rolling out internet access to all the staff and faculty. So I got to train all of them. And so I'd have the journalism professors who were like super savvy. They had their Macs. And then I'd have like the history professor, the old grumpy history professor, like, where the hell's this damn power button?
Yeah.
And what an amazing experience, though, to learn how to interact and communicate with someone about technology, though translating it into something that actually mattered to them.
Yeah.
And so, and I still say a lot of time that I'm a translator. And so having that experience and then still being in college and coming into these high pressure work situations, I based it in the real world. And then going from working on a trading desk and several other organizations out into these construction sites.
Yeah.
I built it boots on the ground, with working with real leaders, working with seasoned tradesmen, brilliant, just brilliant leaders, and they gave me a chance. They listened to what I was saying, and so it was built, and including with not only what I was seeing as their progress, what they were seeing and saying was their progress.
So, as you started to work with these leaders, how did they know that what you were bringing to the table worked?
Yeah, that's because how often do you hear, this shit works?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, pretty much every day.
Yeah, that's mostly what
Hopefully
leaders will
multiple
say.
times a day, yes.
I have you just prompted me to think about this example where down at one of our favorite long-standing clients in the area, a piece of equipment went down, and it was, I forget exactly how many hundreds of thousands of dollars per hour.
Wow.
For that piece of equipment to go down. They're so used to using, so this is an advanced manufacturing company, and they're so used to using the 5 why to get to the root cause. And I brought advancing questions to them. And so they were starting to ask one another, the team members were starting to ask one another out in the plant advancing questions. And one of the operations leaders said, holy shit, we solved this problem in 15 minutes.
Get out.
And often it takes us a hell of a lot longer than that. Sometimes a couple of days. And wow. I was like, holy shit.
Go me.
Yeah. Well, and go them, because as you know, it's all about them being willing. We work with entrepreneurs and leaders who act like one because they're willing to take a healthy risk to do something different than what they've been doing for the past, 15, 20, 30 years.
Yeah. It's interesting because that technical result of, and it's both the technical and behavioral result of, it usually would take us 2 to 3 days to fix this kind of a problem. Yeah. And we just crush this thing in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
That's awesome. A lot of the groups I'm working with are saying, like, holy crap, I'm actually getting to know the people in this part of the business. We're talking about those elephants that nobody wanted to admit were in the room. Like, I don't see that. I don't want to talk about it. And they just didn't know how to talk about it. They just said so often, I don't know how to even kick this door open and how to start the conversation, so I'm just not going to. And that kind of a result as well is going to lead to those kinds of things you just talked about in terms of it there being a technical change for the business to create something different.
Yes, because when so many of the teams we're working with, when they're encountering problems, because we do work primarily in technology and manufacturing businesses, they do have many processes, in-depth, thorough processes, and they've learned focus on the process. And yes, of course, you're going to focus on the process. The problem is they're not looking at each player's personal execution of their part of the process. And so, for example, like you said, sometimes they don't know how. First of all, we're usually working with experienced leaders. And so they're in autopilot more often and for very, very good reason. And so from their successful experience and from their mastery of many things in their domain, they're in autopilot. And so they don't have people around them challenging them from a place of care, not from a place of judgment. And so that's, of course, the role that we get to play as performance advisors, is we get to support them in ways they're not getting from others. And so challenging them while acknowledging, hey, yes, you've approached it this way for a long time for a really, really good reason. And so let's kick this other door open and let's see what's there. And then the other piece too is that, it's not just, because you had asked how do I, where did it come from and how do I know this works? It's because leaders, while we love working, I know you do, I do as well. I love working in the intensity of the business environment. What I hear, though, sincerely from even the most, hard charging, sometimes, crunchy, grumpy,
crusty old guy.
Yeah. But what they say is it's life-changing. And so when they're the ones letting me know how it works and when it works and where it works, and it's not just on the business side; it's on the personal side in their lives.
So besides that piece of it working both at work and at home, because I would imagine that's different, what else are people saying is different about what we're bringing to the table? What else are clients saying is different?
Well, that they are, a couple things are, personally, when they start to realize, holy crap, like I really freaking am in autopilot a lot, and I don't like the way that feels. So number one, they're in the early stages, they're recognizing they're in autopilot more than they want to be. They're also in stress zone more than they want to be, because that's who we work with. Hard chargers, high achievers, running 100 miles an hour, tackling complex problems for their business, scaling, all those things that they're tackling. And so they're in stress or they're in autopilot way more often than they realize. And of course, that doesn't feel good. It's having ramifications and some of those unwanted outcomes, unwanted impact on the relationships that they care about the most. And so that personally, just as a human being, they say that they are very quickly, and this, very quickly from starting to put the Wingspan system and the tools into practice in their behavioral performance, they are they're just so much less stressed. They feel more like themselves. They get their mojo back.
It's funny as you say that. It reminds me of several conversations I've had just this week where at the beginning of the conversation I've asked the leader, hey, how are you feeling? How things going today? Something to that effect. And it was clear, I don't know, I'm not so sure. And then there was definitely some tension. I was like, okay, well, let's talk about it. What's going on that you want to drag onto the table for us to work on? And as they talked about things, and we started to game it out. Like, okay, let's pull this first piece first. Where could that go? Where are you concerned it could go? Where do you really not want it to go? And we start to work through those pieces. You can see them visibly to start to, like, their shoulders hunch and just the shoulders drop. That stress starts to leave. And I'll say, how are you feeling with this? And they're like, Oh my God. I had no idea how to approach this conversation. Thank you. Now I've got some really solid starting points to get this going so that I can then adjust on the fly after I've gotten it going.
Yeah, it goes back to what you asked me, what problems was I solving with this? And another problem that I was aiming to solve is that most of the time when people are assessing another person's proficiency, maybe they're interviewing or they're qualifying them for a position or an opportunity, they say, oh, well, Susie's she's a high performer, but she's leaving a trail of dead bodies in her wake. People are fed up. They actively avoid her and work around her. And so what I saw clearly, it's hard to describe because I just saw it clearly, is that part of the problem is this focus on what people think is someone's personality, or it's their style, like their leadership style, or it's just the way Susie is.
Yeah.
It's this mindset that the person is static, and that's even the word personality. Like, I'm not we discourage those types of words because they send the message that it's unchangeable. It's just the way it is, or that's just who she is. And that's really what I really love. And part of what you were just describing in this example is the wingspan system takes what's been ambiguous and fluffy, and some people think touchy-feely, and we translate that into concrete, tangible, practical dynamics that, and again, behaviors, mindset, communication, that's behavioral performance. Behaviors, mindset, communication. And we break those down into what's practical, tangible, so that people see they're in full control and they're in charge of developing in areas they want to develop. They're in charge of that, and that we're incredibly dynamic. We're not fixed.
So on the behavioral performance front, because you started to say these are the three pieces: mindset, behavior, communication. Let's talk about that a little more, so that folks who are listening to this and perhaps haven't caught enough of the other episodes to have pieced this together. We'll start to pull the thread on this further to help them understand beyond the mindset, behavior, communication. So here's what comes to my head is and you've had conversations already today with leaders who come in and they're saying, oh, I'm frustrated because X is doing this. And what I do in those conversations, and I'm confident you do the same or something very similar, start to say, tell me more about that. What does that look like? How often is that happening? What's actually going on? What are they literally doing? Or what are they literally not doing? That's creating a problem. And so getting deeper into it and then backing up from there to say, here's the behavioral piece. Yeah,
there's a subtle piece I want to point out that to you is you might not even realize it. And this goes back to it's not just, well, it is part of the wingspan system. When leaders come in and they're frustrated, overwhelmed, resentful, maybe. Like maybe they're saying, I'm flipping my lid. I am irate. The difference in how we work with them than nearly every other coach or trainer or whoever is that we don't shy away from that. In fact, we also tell them not to manage, because so much of the time that leader has heard from other people, leave your emotions, at the door before you come in, or you're not being a good leader if you're angry, and so that emotion piece up front, which you glazed over because it's just so natural for you to, that's
just accept it.
Yeah, and that piece is really important to look at, because that's also part of mindset, communication, behaviors, because it's the conversations that a person is having with him or herself. And their emotions have critical information.
Yeah.
So I wanted to point that piece out.
Sure, no, that's great. And what's awesome about that too is that as we're working with leaders on this, one of the things that not only does that emotion inform is where to look, it also usually informs this isn't a singular event. I know for certain that in previous roles I've had, when I've had that person who if I just thought about this person X, I was like, already I'm feeling better, because they consistently did such solid work, and they did it in such a productive way, such a sustainable way, such a way that made it easy for other people to work with them and interact with them. And then I had other people who I just thought, shit, because it was so much at the other end of the spectrum, and none of that was a one-off. So with the behavioral performance piece, for everyone listening, part of what's important for everyone to keep in mind is that when you see something happening again and again and again, that's not a technical thing, it's a behavioral thing. Even if you're thinking, oh, well, they're not following the process. Okay, well, if they don't follow the process once, that's it's still a behavior. It's also just one bit of work. If they're not following that process about that thing, there's a good chance they're not following the process on this other thing or this other thing, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where it's a behavior, because it's now a choice. Oh, they're not choosing to stick with the process. They're choosing to cut it short. They're choosing to half-ass it or whatever it is in the moment.
Yeah. Yes. And so the person's emotion, no matter what that emotion is, the personal contribution process, step one, is, and the two-word check-in, those are both designed to help an individual to get the critical information from that emotion. Yeah. Again, that's different. And the leaders say that it's different, that, anger is a good thing. Yeah, anger can be a fantastic thing. Anger has lots of great information. And so when you, like you were saying, what are they actually doing or not doing? You're using advancing questions to help that person get crystal clear and break it down into what's practical, and as we say in the system, speak for our frustration rather than from our frustration, because it's only when we get that clarity that we can exercise healthy control to go and change it.
Yeah. So as we're landing this plane, for folks listening, you've heard some of where this has come from, but also you've got some good takeaways from this already. Number one, pay attention to your emotions. I think of them like that dashboard light on your truck that's blinking that tells you have lower tire pressure, which I just remembered mine actually is.
In most cases, you don't just ignore it.
No.
or put a smiley face sticker over it.
Yeah. No, that'll be okay. I'll just pretend it's not there.
Yeah.
So that's a great early warning indicator of, hey, something's up and what I'm observing and what's happening in my experiences, and then how to start to identify how much is this a singular thing versus how much is this a pattern, and then to get more granular with those questions we were talking about of what specifically is happening or what specifically is not happening that's working or not working.
Yeah, and even before that, the fastest way to help people to learn what is behavioral performance is to remind them of a phrase. Most people have heard this. Most people have heard, people are hired for skill and fired for behavior.
Yeah.
And that's part of what we solve. And it's not just about people getting fired for behavior. It's that on the behavioral side of performance, that's when we're creating these disconnects and creating problems for ourselves, both at work and at home.
Yeah, awesome. So as we're wrapping, you've got plenty of tools to use from today. So be sure to share this with someone if you want to share the love. Leave us some comments and start doing this, and you'll be leading without the BS.
Yeah, there's so much more to this, so maybe we'll come back for a part 2.
Love it.
All right.